Welcome to Honeybee. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Real stories of love, lies, and betrayal, where every truth stings. Let's begin. I still remember that evening as if it were carved into my memory. Every detail, every word, every sting of humiliation that came with her laughter. It wasn't just a sound of amusement. It was a sound of someone who had already decided that I didn't belong in her world. Her name was Clara. From the outside, she looked like the kind of woman whose smile could light up a dull day. When I met her, she seemed grounded, kind, and gentle, the kind of person who made me believe that love could still exist even after all the disappointments I had endured. We met at a small charity event that my company had sponsored. She worked in public relations and had this effortless charm that drew people in. I was quiet, the reserved type. I wasn't flashy or loud, but I believed in doing things with sincerity. When Clara and I started talking, I didn't think much of it at first. She was confident, intelligent, and had a sense of humor that could disarm anyone. Yet beneath that charm, there was something else, something distant, as if she was always guarding her heart behind a polite smile. Still, she said yes when I asked her out for coffee. That simple yes was the beginning of something I thought was real. From the start, I gave the relationship everything I could. I made time for her no matter how busy my schedule was. I'd drive across the city just to see her for an hour after work. I introduced her to my friends, even to my family, something I rarely did. My parents, especially my mother, adored her. They saw in her what I thought I saw, someone genuine and kind. But as the weeks turned into months, little cracks began to show. She was warm when it suited her, cold when it didn't. She loved attention, especially when we were out with people. She would smile at everyone, make everyone laugh. Except me. When I tried to be playful, she brushed me off like I was a child interrupting an adult conversation. I told myself it was just her personality. Maybe she didn't express affection publicly. Maybe she had her reasons. Then came the night that changed everything. We had been dating for almost a year. It was her birthday, and I had planned something simple but meaningful, a dinner at a cozy restaurant she had once mentioned wanted to try. I got her a gift I knew she would love, a delicate silver bracelet engraved with her initials. I remember wrapping it carefully, making sure it looked perfect. When I picked her up, she looked stunning. She wore a deep blue dress that made everyone turn their heads. But even then, there was something about her smile that felt off, forced, maybe. At dinner, she seemed distracted. Her phone kept lighting up. She excused herself twice to take calls, returning with the same polite smile but empty eyes. I tried to ignore it. I wanted the night to go well. Halfway through the meal, one of her friends spotted us and walked over, a tall, well-dressed guy with a confident grin. "Clara, you didn't tell me you'd be here," he said, and they hugged as if I wasn't sitting right there. I smiled, introduced myself, and extended my hand. He shook it with a kind of smirk that made my stomach tighten. They chatted for a while, mostly about people I didn't know. I sat there quietly, trying not to interrupt. When her friend finally left, I joked lightly, "Guess I'll need to meet more of your friends one day." She laughed, but not the soft, warm laugh I used to love. This one was sharp, almost cruel. Then she looked straight at me and said, loud enough for the tables nearby to hear, "You really think I'd ever introduce you to my parents?" The words hit harder than I expected. For a moment, I didn't even process what she said. The room went silent in my head. I just stared at her, waiting for her to say she was joking. But she didn't. She just looked down at her plate, still smiling, as if what she said was the most normal thing in the world. I felt a rush of heat rise in my face. My throat tightened. The waiter came to refill our glasses, and I barely managed to mutter a thank you. I could feel the eyes of other diners on me. The humiliation was unbearable. I asked quietly, "Why would you say that?" She shrugged. "I'm just being honest, James. You're not exactly the kind of guy they'd approve of." Her tone was casual, detached, as if she was discussing a weather forecast. I didn't know what hurt more, the insult or the indifference. I paid the bill in silence. She didn't even offer to split it. On the drive home, She scrolled through her phone, texting someone, barely acknowledging I was there. I dropped her off at her apartment, and before she stepped out, she said, "Don't take it personally. My family is complicated." And then she left, just like that. I sat in the car for a long time after she went inside, staring at the bracelet box still lying unopened in the glove compartment. I didn't have the heart to give it to her anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. Her laughter kept echoing in my head, replaying over and over like a cruel joke. "You really think I'd ever introduce you to my parents?" I thought about everything I'd done for her, every moment I tried to show her that I cared. And it all came down to that sentence. For days, I tried to convince myself that maybe she didn't mean it the way it sounded. Maybe she was just nervous about family expectations. But the truth was, deep down I knew she had never truly seen me as someone she wanted a future with. To her, I was just convenient. Someone to fill the empty evenings, someone to boost her ego, someone temporary. I realized then how often I had overlooked the signs. The time she'd changed the subject when I talked about long-term plans. The moment she hesitated when people asked how serious we were. The distance in her eyes when I told her I loved her. Love, I learned, isn't about the grand gestures or romantic dates. It's about respect, and she never really respected me. A week passed, and she didn't text or call. I waited, foolishly, thinking she might reach out and apologize. But she didn't. When I finally saw her again, purely by accident, she was with someone else. A guy in an expensive suit, laughing, holding her hand. She saw me from across the street and froze for a second. Then she looked away as if I was just a stranger. That moment hurt more than her words. I walked away, my chest tight, but my mind strangely calm. For the first time, I stopped wondering what was wrong with me and started asking what kind of person could laugh at someone's heart so easily. That night, I took out the bracelet box one last time. I opened it, looked at the silver gleam under the light, and realized it wasn't meant for her anymore. It was meant to remind me never to beg for acceptance from someone who enjoys making me feel small. And as I closed the lid, I whispered to myself, "Never again." After that night, my world felt painfully quiet. It's strange how silence can be louder than words, how it forces you to listen to your thoughts, your insecurities, and your anger all at once. I kept hearing her laugh in my head, that dismissive tone that cut through me like a blade. For a while, I couldn't even go near that restaurant again. Every time I passed it, I felt that same sting of humiliation, as if I were still sitting at that table, frozen in disbelief. I tried to bury myself in work. My colleagues noticed that I'd become distant, quieter than usual. I wasn't bitter, not exactly, just empty. Every message I sent, every call I ignored, was part of me trying to regain control of something I had lost. The truth is, when someone you love disrespects you, it's not just your heart that breaks. It's your sense of worth. I kept asking myself what I did wrong. Was I too soft? Too plain? Not ambitious enough? Maybe I should have dressed better, earned more, spoken less, been someone else. Those thoughts haunted me until one night I looked in the mirror and realized something important. I wasn't the one who needed to change. She was. Clara's words weren't a reflection of my shortcomings. They were a reflection of her pride. She cared too much about appearances, about being seen with someone who fit her family's idea of perfection. And I was real, not perfect, but genuine, and that was never enough for someone who lived for surface-level validation. So I made a decision. I would no longer be the kind of man who begged to be chosen. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet healing. I started running again, something I'd given up after our relationship became all-consuming. I visited my parents more often. My mother noticed how I smiled again, and my father, a man of few words, simply patted my shoulder one evening and said, "You learned something important, didn't you?" Yes, I had. I learned that love isn't about how someone looks at you in public. It's how they treat you when no one's watching. And when someone can laugh at your worth, they've already shown you who they are. Months passed, and I slowly started to rebuild myself. I worked harder, got promoted, and even began mentoring younger employees at work. I found purpose again, not in proving Clara wrong, but in proving to myself that I was more than what she saw. Then one evening, as I was leaving the office, I got a message from an unknown number. "Hey, James, it's me. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long time. It was Clara. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity, or maybe closure, made me respond. We agreed to meet at a cafe the next day. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked tired, not physically, but emotionally. There was a heaviness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She smiled weakly. "Hey," she said softly. "Hi," I replied, sitting across from her. She played with her coffee cup, clearly nervous. "You look good," she said after a pause. "Thanks. You too." There was an awkward silence between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she sighed and said, "I wanted to apologize for that night." I didn't say anything, so she continued. "I was stupid, arrogant. I thought too much about what my parents would think, and not enough about what really mattered. You didn't deserve that." Hearing her say it should have brought relief, but it didn't. I realized that I didn't need her apology anymore. I had already made peace with it long before she reached out. "I appreciate you saying that," I finally said, "but I've moved on." Her eyes softened, almost sad. "I can see that. You've changed. You seem happier." "I am," I said truthfully. She nodded, looking down at her coffee again. "I broke up with someone recently. He was everything my parents wanted. Successful, confident, well-connected. But he treated me like I didn't matter. Funny, isn't it? I used to laugh at the wrong things." Her words hung in the air like an echo of karma. For a moment, I saw the woman I once loved, not perfect, not cruel, just human and flawed. I didn't feel anger anymore, only a strange sense of calm. We talked a little longer, mostly about life and work, but the emotional connection that once existed between us was gone. Before leaving, she said quietly, "If I could go back, I'd do things differently." I smiled gently. We all would. And that was it. No dramatic goodbye, no bitterness, just closure. That night, as I walked home, I realized something profound. Sometimes, people hurt you not because you're unworthy, but because they don't yet know how to value what's real. It took losing me for Clara to see that, but it took being hurt by her for me to understand my own strength. Over time, I met someone new. Her name was Lila, kind, grounded, and the opposite of everything Clara was. She didn't care about appearances or status. She cared about effort, about honesty. The first time she met my parents, she brought flowers for my mother and spent an hour helping my dad fix a squeaky cabinet door. It wasn't about impressing them. She genuinely cared. One evening, while we were walking by the same street where I once saw Claire with that other man, Lila asked, "You look like you're remembering something, good or bad?" I smiled faintly. A little of both. She didn't press further. She just took my hand and said, "Whatever it was, you're here now. That's what matters." And she was right. We can't erase the moments that break us, but we can choose what we build from the pieces. Clara's laughter once haunted me, but now it reminded me of how far I had come. It taught me never to lose myself in someone else's approval again. Years later, when I look back at that night, the dinner, the humiliation, the pain, I didn't feel bitterness anymore, just gratitude. Because that moment, as cruel as it was, pushed me toward becoming the kind of man who doesn't settle for half-hearted love. Some wounds don't close immediately. They take time, reflection, and distance. But one day, they stop hurting. And when that happens, you realize the pain was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to wake you up. And I did wake up. Now, every time I think about her laughter, I no longer hear mockery. I hear a reminder of who I used to be and how far I've grown since then. Because in the end, it wasn't her rejection that defined me. It was my decision to never let someone else decide my worth again.